thank you guys so much for doing this. This podcast is about you guys and your journey in music and how you got to where you are now.
Fantastic.
Right on. Well, Jeff, let's start with you. So you guys are both in Ashbury right now, or no?
No, I
John-
live in upstate New York, a couple hours north of New York City.
Okay, cool. Let's say, Jeff, originally you said you're not originally from Ashbury. Where are you? Where were you born and raised?
Well, I'm basically a Carolina boy. I've been here on and off most of my life, so got redneck in my blood. I went to grad school in England and have a number of different places, but North Carolina has always been my home.
Very cool. Very cool. And what about you, John?
Well, I live in upstate New York. I grew up in South Florida, Fort Lauderdale area, Pompano Beach. Moved to Boston for school and been in the Northeast. City out to the woods, and then to New York City after that, and then now I'm out in the woods again.
Right on. And how did you get into music?
Oh, well, my dad used to sit me at the piano when I was a baby, and I started taking classical piano lessons when I was about 5 years old. And that's kind of all I've ever done, really. I had my first gig when I was 12, and it's the only thing, kind of the only job I've ever had, really.
Wow. Was your dad a professional musician as well, or?
No, he had about an hour's worth, 40 minutes to an hour's worth of, cocktail party entertainment up his sleeve. And he would sit at the piano after the appropriate number of cocktails and just, keep everybody entertained with, the songs of his generation,
That's awesome. Well, so you said you started playing classical piano at 5 years old. How old were you when you first sat on the piano? Like infant?
No, there's pictures of me, like probably, little, like, because we had a piano in the house. So I've seen pictures from really little. My dad used to sit me up there and play with me, before that, for sure.
Wow. And 12 was your first gig.
Yeah.
Was that originals? Is that like a recital? Tell me about that.
No. Well, I was doing recitals before that, as a class, but I think my first sort of gig that paid, it was a theater company. I just backed up accompanying a theater company when I was 12.
Wow.
Yeah,
so you just
I called my first gig because I got paid. I don't know what, it was almost nothing, but yeah, I just played music all the time, everything. I would just do anything. I started taking jazz lessons when I was about 11, and I had a teacher, amazing teacher, this woman, Lee Shaw, incredible master of putting material together. And I was very lucky she was down in Florida at that time because she's from upstate New York. But she was down there, and one of the things she told me, she's like, if you get asked to do a gig, say yes, and then go figure it. If something you don't know how to do, go say yes.
Fake it till you make it.
Figure out how to do it before you get to the gig. Like that.
Right on.
Say yes to everything. Do everything you can. And that was easy for me because I still kind of like that. I say yes. No is a hard word for me to get out of my mouth.
That's awesome. Very cool. Well, okay. So Jeff, where were you originally from? Born and raised?
Denver, Colorado, and then moved to North Carolina when I was about 8 years old.
Okay. And how did you get into music?
I got into music because I was a weird kid. I was completely obsessed with Henry Mancini, and I watched the Henry Mancini show all the time and just loved big band stuff and loved the idea of like composing music for movies and cinema. I was just completely like enamored with what this guy was up to and wanted to play flute.
Interesting.
And my teeth were all crooked and stuff, so I couldn't. And my second choice was drums, and my parents were like, oh my god, drums. And my mom actually did something really smart when I was 8 years old. She said, well, she didn't like to cook, and she said, well, Jeff, if you take some of the cooking responsibilities, we'll get you a drum set.
Wow.
But as soon as you drop those responsibilities, the drum set goes. And to this day, I mean, she's like 84, and I'll get in her car and she's got, like a CD of Led Zeppelin or the Rolling Stones in her CD player. She's just like driving along, she's
wow.
a big fan of cooking, and she became a big fan of rock and roll as a consequence. So I've been playing ever since, and cut my teeth with Southern rock bands. I played in a Skinner tribute band, and
Awesome.
Like 16 and got to warm up for John Lee Hooker. It was like the biggest, my first show was
Wow.
pretty much the biggest show I ever did. It was like 6,000 people or something like that. It was pretty.
Whoa. How did you get that gig? That's crazy.
It was a big street festival in the town where I lived, and the guitarist's dad was like, like one of the big donors to the Chamber of Commerce, so he kind of worked it for us. It was fantastic. I mean, I got bit by the performance bug at a really early age.
Wow. 16, you said, when that happened? And then from that band, you guys were a Skinner tribute band?
Yeah, we played.
Okay.
Yeah, we did a lot of Skinner. We, had hair down to our butts and
Sure.
cool. And then I unfortunately got into prog rock. That kind of got me off.
There you go. Did you join a prog rock band, or like were you playing in one?
Yeah,
Okay.
we were doing prog rock, and of course it was the time of REM and flannel, and it just didn't go very well. We tried very hard.
Was that like did you guys, I mean, how seriously did you take that band? Were you guys touring and really trying to get a deal and make it a career?
Yeah, we were touring around, and we did 2 albums with Mitch Easter of REM fame, and
Wow.
And that was really fun. One album got some good airplay in Canada. I remember getting like $1.25 checks from BMI for radio play.
That's cool though.
Yeah, it was really good working with Mitch. I reconnected with him the other day. What an incredible person, an incredible producer. Gosh. Yeah.
That's amazing. With those, did you ever get a chance to hear your band on the radio, or like were you ever up in Canada when they're playing it? Or
no, unfortunately not. The only time I've heard myself on the radio is actually here in Western North Carolina with our premiere release with Saint Disruption.
Oh wow.
Stories was we have a really awesome WNCW, a really awesome radio station that supports regional acts and Americana. They're fantastic.
That's cool. Even with the airplay, did you guys you didn't tour in Canada?
No, we toured in the States. My van would only make it about 300 miles, so we kept it's like old 70s, 70s Chevy van that was always breaking down. So we figured we better keep it within 300 miles or so.
There you go.
Something like John has done.
I was gonna ask, what about you, John? Like, so from the 12-year-old, the theater gig, what did you join a band? Like, what was next for you?
Well, I've always done a lot. I mean, it's sort of like done everything. I mean, when I was in high school, I mean, that time, I played with theater companies. I played in big bands. I played in, because there was like, where I grew up in Fort Lauderdale, there was an incredible live music scene back then. This is the 70s, and so I played in these sort of regional community big bands that had, people of all ages, depending on the level of their playing. I played in this big, and I worked with the Children's Theater Company. I wrote a couple of musicals for them. I continued playing classical music. I was playing jazz. I played in a band. Sort of my first sort of real quote unquote band, because back then we're talking South Florida. The laws around bars and liquor were a lot looser than most other places in the country. So as a 15-year-old, I was able to play in this bar, this club called the Musicians Exchange, and there was a band it was called Emergency was the name of the band, and it was bass, keyboards, and drums. This great bass player named Charles Norkus, who goes by Chuck Doom now, lives out in LA and has this project called Saudades. That's really amazing. Mm-hmm. And a drummer, this drummer Paulie, who was actually Jaco Pastoris' brother-in-law, and so we played. I played Rhodes in that band, and we just played that. That was sort of, and then I kind of played a lot of different stuff at that point. And then I would play weddings. Every New Year's I'd play with big bands, put on a tux and go play. Played a lot of bar mitzvahs and weddings and bands because I could read music and stuff. So I would just hop in there and do these gigs. So it's kind of like, I did a wide variety of stuff, but always, sort of with this dream of jazz piano, sort of. That was kind of really like what I loved and was really working towards.
Wow.
And then I went to went to school in Boston. Went to music school in Boston.
Did you go Berkeley?
No, hell no.
Oh,
music conservatory. I'm going. Going. Yeah.
Wait.
I went to the conservatory.
Oh, okay. That's funny. But you've played with a bunch of people. I mean, even I'm looking at your Wikipedia page. You were like featured on like a Coheed and Cambria record of it, like stuff like that. Like that's just
Yeah.
seems so much different than like a classical piano.
Yeah. Well, I don't. Yeah. I mean, yeah. I mean, I grew up when I grew up. I mean, I listened to everything. I was just that's what I say. For me, music is music. You know, this whole like pigeonholing, boxing up of. I mean, I play all kinds of music. You know, I don't play classical music anymore, although you know I love it. It's like I stopped. You know, when I went to school, I stopped because I realized that's not what I wanted to do with my life. You know, started exploring jazz and the explorations of jazz, and the idea of like sort of finding my own style got me into really examining who I was, who I am. You know, and I realized that well, I'm not actually really a jazz guy either. You know, I'm sort of this, I am what I am. I'm this dude who grew up in Florida at the time that I did, listening to the music that I did, and so my whole thing has been about trying to be honest about that. But I love so much different music. So I played with, yeah, I played with a lot of, I played with a pretty broad variety of stuff, but because I like it all, you know.
Sure.
I just have, you know, I've developed a certain relationship to music, melody, harmony, rhythm that has basically been my life. So I can transpose that into different styles. To me, there's, I don't, you know, as somebody once said, hardening of the categories promotes art disease. And
Uh,
I really feel that, man. I just like, you know, it's like I love music. Period. You know, I've gone through phases where like what I call like I was a jazz hole. I used to call, you know, what I call these people where like, you know, it's got to be this or that to be good. And I just, you know, I grew out to realize, you know, music is just good. Period. Music is good. It's important, and it's one of our greatest languages as human beings. It's one of the greatest things we've ever done. You know, maybe the best language that we have.
Sure.
You know, I would say, in my opinion. So I just like it all, man. And it's like, yeah, I feel it's very much of a business, you know, this music business limitation that, oh, you know, they try to, so they can put you in, it started with the record stores, put you in a section of the record store. So you had to like really focus what you were doing if you wanted to sell it. And I guess it's probably not the smartest thing, but I've done the opposite. I'm always just doing everything. So consequently, you know,
Yeah, I mean,
I'm not the smartest business guy. You know, that's the way it goes. That's what I get.
Well, tell me, like, you formed the super group with like you know Chino of Deftones. You have Dr. No of Bad Brains. Like, were these people that you knew personally prior to? Like, how do you?
That was actually that's this project with the guy I was talking about that I played with in high school, who's you know Charles Norcus Chuck Doom. He put that project together.
Oh wow!
Projects, you know, yeah. So this is, you know, I just I end up as sort of a collaborator, have in a lot of things, you know. But generally, like my exploration has been with instrumental music, you know. And although I love playing with these you know people, I love songs, I love it all. But my personal music has been instrumental music and the power that that language has on its own.
Okay, okay. And then how? Okay, so Jeff, how do you meet John? Like, when does this relationship form?
Oh, just like in a nominal cafe in the middle of the city. No, actually, we actually met in the middle of the Ecuadorian Amazon, a long way from the nearest small.
Really?
Yep.
Really extraordinary.
Okay, I thought you were gonna go off on some joke here. Wait, okay, so how did you guys meet in the middle of an Ecuadorian what jungle?
There's nothing normal about this story.
Okay, I want to hear it.
Any aspect of it.
We were each on pilgrimages for our own growth and healing and our own reasons, and we're sitting in this noted healer's kitchen essentially, and just finding out who each other was. John was there with his wife and I guess a friend of y'all's, and we struck up a conversation. I discovered that I'm, you know, sitting with one of my favorite musicians in the world, and we kind of kept in touch after that. Our meeting was just, you know, a few hours on one afternoon when they arrived to work with this guy. And I guess shortly thereafter, John, we did the immigration stuff to bring the Sequoia in to do some recording, and we have kept in touch on various projects. And it wasn't until the pandemic hit that you know, something substantial, you know, blossomed in collaboration for us. And now we have this art and music collective with some 30 people involved, and I think we're creating some pretty truthful and fun music and poetry and visual art.
Mm-hmm. And well, okay, so where were you guys at when this hit? Like when coronavirus hit, were you working on separate projects? Like how did that affect you and then kind of, forming this?
Yeah, we were in our own lives. I was actually, my last gig was with this band that I have called The Word, and we were in
Mm-hmm.
Tampa, Florida, March 8th, a year ago. And it was hitting pretty hard. And then I came back and that was it. Everything else got canceled after that, So that was like my world. And then
Were you on tour, or was this like a one-off kind of show that you guys did?
No, it was a festival,
Oh, okay.
So we were just, it was like a one-off festival gig in Tampa, and and then I came back up here, and that was it. I've been basically here in upstate New York
Ever since.
one trip to Peru in December. I've been here otherwise the whole time.
Wow. What about you, Jeff? Where were you at?
Same thing. I was planning a very, very full year. I had 5 trips to Europe planned, and all of the work that I was doing at the time was dependent on being in person with people, workshops, retreats, teaching, and everything within the span of 2 weeks disappeared. And I did what I usually do. I was just like, okay, Spirit, what's up? What am I going to do? How can I serve with these bizarre circumstances? And the message I got was to really go back to music and poetry, and to somehow speak and reflect what I'd experienced in the last 20 years as a teacher, a curandero, as a scientist, as a troublemaker. And, the message was that I'd be supported. And holy wow, this has been such an amazing ride. Just, completely replete with miracle after miracle after miracle. I mean, it's just like my life was perfect to start with, and now it's like, whoa, that's some damn dope icing on the cake. I mean, I'm having a blast.
Sure. Wow. Well, how did the idea of Sane Disruption come about? Were you guys chatting about this, collective of people, or was it just, let's get together and try to do something? Like, how did the idea start?
John, you want to take it?
Look, I was just sitting around my house, and I get an email from Jeff with asking about that he had this piece, that he thought I might be right for, and it was, and I look a little deeper into it. Wow, it's Umar from The Last Poets, and both Jeff and I have. Since I first heard that, they're life changing, for me when I first heard them, and they really started a whole movement, that has blossomed into what we now know as rap. And when they started this, it's hardcore words with music, very political, and it was deep, and I think for a lot of people, those records were life changing. So yeah, Umar on this, and I was like, wow, okay, I guess this, how can I say no to this?
Mm-hmm.
And he sent it to me. He had like a little piano part written out on some weird computer score thing, and I was like, all right, I'll try this. And he had a recording with a really cool beat on it, with with Umar's poem on it, and then a real extended section after the poem, like really open. And so I played the part, sort of the way he had it, and then I just was like, you know what, I got nothing to lose here. I'm just gonna play with what I'm feeling.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna react to this poem in this way that I, in sort of my concept of what, this poetry and music interaction can be. I'm just gonna react to the poem. I'm gonna feel it, and I'm gonna do my part. So I did that. That's what I did. I just played. I did a few passes on it. I sent it back to Jeff, having no idea. I often just try to do what I think people want. If I'm doing a recording like that, just make sure that they're, give them what they want. So it was kind of, for me, it was a little stretch to put my feelings into it. So I did. I put my feelings into it, and Jeff came back and he loved my feelings. So that was very reassuring. And
Sure.
that's for me. That's how it started. It was through the music, through the connection. And that's kind of how most projects that that I've been involved with, it's really about that. Like, because there's like, this is like weird, but it's like there's a, like, music is really an expression of, it's not the mind, that's like words, books, we can write down what we're thinking. Music is truly something about, our heart has, is probably smarter than our mind, and music really is the language of communicating, this thing between idea and emotion, which, this intelligence that we have, and so when I feel like when you relate to each other on that level, like, when you relate to music like that, it's a good thing. And that's what I felt. I felt like Jeff really, and I think a lot of times I'm scared because I have so much experience playing a lot of different kinds of music in a lot of situations. I don't, sometimes I'm scared to really reveal like what I would do.
Mm-hmm.
Because, there's that part of it, well, whatever, who cares? Who cares what I think? Who cares what I have to offer? And the fact that Jeff cared really meant a lot to me. It felt really good. And it kind of opened this door, like, wow, okay, so cool. This is like, there's a real symbiosis here. Like, what I felt, he felt what I felt and was excited about it. So he sent me another track and I did the same thing, and the same thing happened. So then, like, to me, I was like, okay, God, we can really do something. I'm feeling, we're on the same page, really, and just having such a parallel history with our, sort of spirit oriented work, with South America, Jeff's done a lot of work in the Andes. The first time I went down there, I had this major initiation with the Caro that I didn't even know was happening. And now I can look back on it and realize it was, because I was involved in a movie and I was going to do the soundtrack.
Mm-hmm.
And this woman put us through this, like, major initiation for like almost 2 weeks.
Oh, wow.
All over the place, Pacha Tucson. We went to all these different, spots, and
To
and
like
now,
get
and now I
a
realize,
feel
wow,
for it, like as far as the movie went, like that's pretty.
yeah, I didn't know I was getting set up, and then Jeff has been doing the same thing in his own way, and we have a lot of parallels in our lives,
Mhm.
and so for this to come together, and I think we also really believe in music as a healing force, just in and of itself. I mean,
Mhm.
we want to, like, this whole thing, and like just trying to bring that back, and that's, and then and community, music community, the collective, and what it can do for us, how it can inspire us, how it can help us live better, how it can heal us, and that doesn't mean it has to be gongs and singing bowls,
Mhm.
that's great too, but it could also just be real music that we're feeling, that has to do with the politics of the times, because it's been a wild ride the past few years,
Sure.
so we want
Sure.
to express that truth in the music, but also have it feel good. It's like, something that we, a passion and a desire that we share. And also the way what Jeff just told his story about how he came to this idea of creating this music. That to
Mhm.
me is, that's always where music comes from for me. It's like, and the fact that he comes at, like, and then he comes, and then it's this kind of music that it's, it's a little more, it's more accessible. There's songs, but he's coming from this place of, like, asking what to do, sort of a, I don't know what to call it, a prayerful place, a meditation spot place, and that's for me, like, the real deal. So, that's how I got roped in. Fake disruption.
Okay. Okay. Well, so the record coming out is called Rose in the Oblivion. And is this an album of music put together by you guys, and then you have like Umar or whoever come on and do their piece, or like how does the album like flow as far as people contributing to it?
This has been a work in progress, because there's been quite a few limitations in people getting together.
Sure.
So essentially, I spent the first 6 months of last year just completely in this I don't know if obsessed is the word, but I was deeply entrenched. What John and I did with Umar really just set me on fire. I mean, it was like, wow, this is something completely new, and I just completely went for it and wrote and work at, and basically I'm in my home studio here. This is where I did most of the initial demos and stuff, and John I would share demos, and then we'd get stuff to the point where they could actually be taken to my friend Michael Hines' studio, where we did most of the drums, and then Applehead Studios up where John lives, where John has done a tremendous amount of work. He and his buddy Chris up there did a lot of recording up there too. So it was basically cobbling stuff together, despite the fact that there were lots of travel and logistic limitations with people. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I
Okay.
think there was something about the inefficiency of it that actually helped it along, because we had a lot of time, the luxury of a lot of time with the songs, and a number of the songs went through multiple generations, multiple iterations, changing rhythms, changing changing key signatures, just all sorts of things happened that oftentimes you just book a week in the studio and you kind of blast past. And here we had more incubation time, so I think there was a kind of a beauty and positive outcome in the fact that we did have more time and some inefficiencies keeping us moving at a particular pace.
Mm-hmm. And with the personnel on the record, like for example, the Umar song, like was that something that you're like, okay, he's going to be perfect for this song, so I'm going to reach out to him, or whatever the next song or next single will be, is that something that you kind of had an idea in your mind, like, okay, I want to use this person, maybe hopefully they'll be down, or did you have a bunch of people you already knew and you're like, okay, let's collectively decide who can sing or do what on what song?
It was a little bit of both. I mean, I think, with Umar, it was, sort of it was an actualization of a spiritual principle that kind of guides a lot of my life. And that is, if you're working with a particular theme, whether that theme is a contagion or imbalance or illness in a person, or if you're working with a discipline, an academic discipline, you always go back to the source, always go back to the originating seed that was planted. And that's how you can affect the most change. And right around the time that I was, starting to blossom all this with John, the whole civil rights, all the issues surrounding and pain surrounding the civil rights thing came right back to the fore. And I was like, well, I feel like I need to write about this, because I'd worked with so many people over the years as a curandero who faced oppression in their lives, and I myself in my early childhood experienced a lot of that. So I was like, I got to write about this, and and so immediately I thought, well, goodness gracious, the seed that we're talking about here in contemporary music is the Last Poets. And I just, but I have nothing to lose. I'm going to try to find Umar and see if he would do something. And not only did he say yes, but he agreed to read one of my poems, which has become the song Stories. And he contributed, I think what John is referring to is that there was a certain authenticity and vulnerability that constituted the beginning of this project. I mean, Umar gave us an autobiographical poem, a very weighty, very vulnerable autobiographical poem, and said, here, you guys, please don't mess this up. Actually, he said,
Sure.
Don't mess this up.
He didn't ask, please. You didn't ask politely.
Not mess this up. And as soon as I got that, I was like, wow, I just got myself in just a little bit over my head. And John was the first person that came to mind. I was like, this is going to take, I'm about collaboration. I'm like, I got to find somebody who is smarter and a better musician than I am, and somebody who shows up in the moment and lets medicine flow through them. And, of course, John was the first person I thought of. And so, for me, it's interesting. It's like, there's a teaching from complexity theory that complex systems are exquisitely sensitive to initial conditions. And one of the things that I'm most proud about in this project is that we got off to, I think, a really good start. I mean, we modeled, John and I, through this collaboration, modeled what has become the foundational juice, the foundational energy for this community. I mean, it's like all about supporting one another in growing and learning and using music and art to grow and get to know oneself in a deeper way and get to know the world in a deeper way. I mean, I just friggin' love that.
Mm-hmm. I love that too. And as far as the record goes, you guys are doing a Kickstarter to put the album out. And I love that you're donating a portion of the proceeds, correct? Tell me about that.
Well, that's sort of theoretical at this
Oh,
I mean, we have that aspiration, but we know that the music industry is so turned upside down.
sure.
Unintentionally, I mean, the democratization of the recording process has kind of had some unintended consequences, i.e., destroying any chance of most musicians having a middle class life. The economics are upside down, and so we are holding that as an intention, and we're actually creating a record label that has that particular concept as a cornerstone. The idea of bringing music fans who are interested in social change together with great music, and so every time they listen to a tune that's under the Root Doctor Media record label, they know that they're making a small contribution to change. I mean, that's the model, and we've got like 3 different bands we're talking with now about joining forces. We really hope to actualize that. Now, if one of the songs hits or ends up as a movie theme, then yeah, we'll be donating lots. But right now, we're just kind of getting ourselves started.
I think what Jeff is saying is that, like, yeah, we're doing that, but when so little is coming in, it's like it's not like we're not sending 6-figure checks to anyone.
Sure.
I mean, it's part of it, but it is, and it's also, it's not, when really famous bands do things like that, it's great because they can give a lot of money. But
Right.
it is a basic principle of how we're starting off, and I guess we don't want to make a big deal of it because, like, it's only a tiny amount of this.
Still, it's something. That's awesome.
It's built in as it just should be,
Right.
And yeah, I mean, like I said, it's a hard business for that.
Sure. Well, thank you guys so much for being on and chatting with me today. I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you, Adam. It's been really fun.
Yeah, I do have one more question for the both of you. I want to know if you have any advice for aspiring artists. Jeff, take it away.
Tell your truth, really. And don't be afraid. Be fearless in telling the truth that's in your heart. And don't let anybody tell you that you need outside agency or authority to know what's true and real. And trust your body, because your body always tells the truth.
I love that. What about you, John?
I guess for me, just from a more musical standpoint, it's just a similar. I feel that that's what Jeff said is absolutely the bottom line. I would say really get to know yourself, musically and in every other way. You really get, and you need to practice your musical skills, but have something in your life that helps you get to know yourself. Whatever practice that is, could be so many different things, but because that's what we need is we need people really expressing themselves, right now, and not just doing things, to achieve success. Just to be trying to outsmart some formula, but we really need people expressing themselves right now.